Okay, let's have a look at game 4. So Kasparov playing black. Nigel kicked off with e4. Kasparov played e5. Okay, after knight f3, knight c6, we don't have the royal pairs, which will be bishop b5, but instead we have an invitation for the Gyoko piano, bishop c5. So black playing bishop c5. This is now Gyoko piano territory. Now we could have a totally stodgy position if white plays knight c3. So stodgy, in fact, that Exeter Chess Club has marked this as like giving it the Stodge Award, and juniors should avoid knight c3 like the plague. Thankfully, there is a very exciting continuation available for white here. So if you don't want to play the royal pairs, you can pretend as though you're going to enter the dreaded stodge territory, but here, Gambit, positional sacrifice. A gambit by another name is an early positional sacrifice. So what do you get from a positional sacrifice? You lose material, you get quality, and you get time, usually. Quality and time. So what is the early positional sacrifice? b4. It's also got a central control motivation, that sometimes maybe the bishop's good here, hitting e5. Also, it could accelerate c3 and d4. If white gets these adjacent pawns, it's controlling all of these squares, so it's accelerating potentially central control. Now, the history of the Evans Gambit, this is a little bit from Wiki. The Gambit is named after the Welsh seaman Captain William Davies Evans, the first player known to have employed it. The first game with the opening is considered to be Evans McDonnell, London 1827, although in that game a slightly different move order was tried. First it was with white castling, and then after d6 then b4. But in 1832 the first analysis of the Gambit was published is in the second series of progressive lessons 1832 by William Lewis. The Gambit became very popular shortly after that, being employed a number of times in the series between McDonnell and Labourdonnais in 1834. So this is in the romantic era of chess. It belongs here because it is putting a lot of pressure on the black position. There's a lot of king safety implications from the initiative that this early positional sacrifice generates. The central control is a good positive positional aspect in any case. Pieces in the centre have more flexibility for attacking on either side, and also this accelerated c3 and d4 idea. I have some videos actually about the Evans Gambit, and there's a response video because I think Alta Vista did a fun video with Kasparov in a simul about someone using the Alta Vista search engine to prepare against Kasparov. So there's some amusement around it. Kasparov himself used this gambit in the early 80s, so it's a nostalgic throwback. He even beat Anand with it in Riga 1995, so it had a brief revival of interest after the Anand game. Okay, so the gambit was accepted by Kasparov. We have this accelerated building up of the centre, so white's going to control, you know, these central squares in an accelerated fashion if he can get d4 in. So look at these two adjacent pawns. The pawn on d4 is supported, being able to be recharged with the pawn there, but also the bishop's also got this diagonal which could be sensitive for black. So it's got a few things going for it. Kasparov took on d4. And now queen b3, as Wishen's instead of an ordinary, well, there's no recapture anyway because the pawn's pinned, pardon me, so he's just targeting f7. Black now has to defend f7, it would seem, so he plays actually queen f6. Now ordinarily this looks like a strange move to play, because usually, you know, white's going to punish black for that, but look at this situation. In the specific details of this position, there's no such exploitability factor of the queen on f6. So the queen on f6 is bearing influence, and if it goes there, it's bearing influence on the king's side. So all of these squares, the queen is actually playing an attacking role in this game. And white queen on the queen's side also leaves maybe the king's side a bit exposed. Okay, but after castles, okay, the pawn is actually given back with d3. So maybe you know, this pawn remains a target actually, and a sort of pin on a1 in some variations, but e5 is played, so this has all been played hundreds of years before. Queen g6, and queen g6, although it looks artificial and the queen needs more support, it can potentially get that with black playing d5 and bishop h3 if white's not careful. But bishop a3, So we're following really classical games. In fact, I think the evergreen game we're following. So they're having a good laugh. Both Nigel and Kasparov are having a good laugh in this match. So they may have arranged these openings, and this is certainly a lot more fun to consider than the previous game from an opening point of view. It's a throwback to the Romantic era, that the evergreen game it's reminiscent of. But black has managed the castle, so he's not going to be slain in the centre. The king is going to live for another day here. Queen h6. So is the queen getting kicked around? Is Kasparov also tempting bishop c1? But actually, for the moment, knight d2, and now comes d5. So d5, if uncontested, is leaving a pawn nicely controlling two key central squares, which means knight c4 is the prime, which would have been harassing the bishop. Okay, so the pawn's taken, cd, it's held onto by that queen laterally. Bit of pressure now, knight e4, not knight c4. Maybe if knight c4, bishop c7 is adequate to defend the pawn and threaten d5 and start coordinating pieces. So actually knight e4 is played, but d5 anyway. And look at the battle of the centre now. Now here is an engine improvement apparently. A knight thrusting with knight eg5 is recommended from an engine point of view, giving bishop g4. And although now there is a serious threat of f6 and doing serious damage to white's kingside, especially if you consider bishop c7, there's mounting threats here. But apparently white has c4 here, which might come to the rescue, prophylaxis against f6 if this diagonal is exposed as being slightly weak. An example variation, taking on f3, rook d8, cd, knight takes, bishop c4, white would end up better. The bishops can stay like this on these parallel roads here, and white should be okay here. White should be okay, but Nigel actually he moves his bishop away from the a3 to f8 diagonal. Now he plays bishop c1, which seems attractive as well. The queen's kicked and forced to go into a seemingly embarrassing spot where there's a discovered attack now on the queen, as well as making the king situation kind of cozy looking with the two knights. But unfortunately c3 is actually a little bit of a liability here after queen f6 it seems. What is white going to do about c3? Nigel's not really worried about c3. He uses it as a positional sack now. It's only a blitz game. It's 5 minute, I believe, with 2 second increment. I've been informed on the previous video just earlier. So knight h5. So c3 is offered up. Does white maintain enough initiative and attacking prospects, or is black going to sort of counterattack by first increasing his domination in the centre and then arranging a counterattack maybe later at the black king? Well, queen b4 offering the exchange of queens, bishop takes h7, also offering h7 to decentralise white somewhat. Now bishop b2, keeping potential threats like of bishop g7. Well, there's an immediate threat because of the knight in fact, so that has to be parried here. So how does Kasparov do it? He plays actually f6. At the moment there's no easy entry points. g6 is covered by the knight. Knight takes f6 is not really the rook's adequately defending f6. It doesn't seem as though there's an easy hacking path here for white. So after h3 now it seems Kasparov is getting a better grip on the central squares. He connects rooks now with this next move, bishop e6. So the rooks are connected, and furthermore bishop g8 might start to extinguish some of the flames from the fire of white's attack. So knight d4 was now played. Bishop f7 actually first trying to evict this pesky knight on h5. It's kicked back. Now bishop b6, and we start to see immense focus on the d4 central square. So this starts to make it look as though the h7 pawn sack is justified to kind of decentralise white, put pressure across the centre, and of course the white king is behind all this. So the white king could be in trouble soon. In fact, if this knight moves, say there, then queen g3, there's a nasty pin on f2. So in this position, knight gf5. This isn't looking good now as far as the central battle is concerned after rook ae8. White's rooks are not as well connected as the black rooks here. Black has this e-file access. Nevertheless, white is holding on here after queen f4. Okay, it looks as though the centre has been taken over by black, but is it enough to win the game? F5 is now played. Okay, now this is very interesting, offering the pawn in two different ways actually, bishop or queen. The queen actually took. Let's just engine check this. If the bishop takes, is there a major disaster? Queen takes apparently was the best, but still black's better in both variations. But here, sort of mini disaster actually, rook e2, and black seems to be significant if white has to lose the f2 pawn. If he protects, rook takes b2 is here, that's very simple to pick up the bishop. Or even bishop h5, so if the bishop moves, then white's getting slaughtered, I think, on the king side. There's a threat of rook takes f3 here. Look at all these pieces all of a sudden bearing at white's king, not like that but like that. So there's too much pressure here for white to handle. So basically this was right to take with the queen. So end of the queens now. Let's turn that off. Big board. End of the queens. Queens come off. And black stands better, but it seems actually it wasn't enough actually. There was an opportunity coming up, even after losing f2, for white to still draw this game, and it was a fantastic opportunity which appears to have been missed. And to be honest, I haven't checked external analysis of this game at all, and I hope other people have picked this up in their engine analysis of this game. Hang on, we have an exchange of rooks here, so a very simplified position, and I hope I have the right move score here, because apparently there was quite a dramatic drawing possibility now coming up after g5 check, knight f4. Okay, it looks as though black has a very powerful asset indeed, the outside pass pawn, and a potentially dominating bishop over the knight. But after this move, bishop d4, this may have been a huge blunder. An engine line given now to draw the game, and it's quite deep foresight for an engine without even a table base, is to get this theoretically drawn position. Knight b5, what would black do here? If black plays bishop b6, guess how white can draw this? If I give you 10 seconds, can you guess, starting from now? Okay, I hope your endgame technique is good. White can draw this by forcing a theoretical draw. Knight takes, bishop takes, h5, forcing off or black's last remaining pawn to be an h pawn, and with the bishop on the wrong colour of the queening square, white loses his g7 pawn and leaves a completely theoretically drawn position. So Nigel may have missed this possibility. Instead he plays disastrously here apparently. Well, it is only a 5-minute game with 2-second increment. He, instead of knight b5, he plays knight e2, and it's completely, it's terrible now. Bishop e5. The bishop's dominating the knight, the standard domination, and the pawn's set to queen. It seems without too much trouble. So this is bad news. In fact, there was a skewer at the end. And that's it. Ouch. So it was only a 5-minute game though with 2-second increment. So I expect there's a lot of these major like blunders in this match. We're only at game 4, but this was unfortunate. If there was time to consider this, obviously it's very easy for us armchair analysts with engines to find all these resources just at the right time, the exact moment in the game to pounce like tactically. But this would have been it with h5, so forcing a theoretical draw. So I hope I'm not going completely mad by pointing this out, and hope other analysts are pointing out. I have not checked any other analysts of this game, so you're just gonna. I hope I'm accurate in that assessment that was a major blunder there. Okay, so there's other opportunity which I've picked up on. It seems that there seems to be an improvement on in this position. Instead of bishop c1, it seems to be that knight eg5, and I'll put this annotated PGN in the description of the video. So it seems knight eg5 keeps some bite going for white here. In this continuation, even c4 here, instead of bishop h7 is quite good, I think. This will be okay for white too. This position. What's the other option? Instead of c4, taking, and here, this is very, very interesting resource roundabout here, which I may have not picked up first time. But if bishop takes, there's a resource here, queen a4, forking the two bishops. So that's also further justification for this knight g5 move, that this queen a4, because bishop takes e7, knight takes, had made this bishop and pre. So it's all a bit tactically coincidental, a bit of pyrotechnics here, that this bishop was in pre now, and white would be okay here too. So it seems there's justification, tactical justification for knight eg5. Okay, but let's just review past that. So in the game, it seems white, essentially the problem for white, he started to lose the central war. There's always a war in the center, and behind this war, winning that particular central battle leads to the king quite often. White's king's behind that, but Nigel played correctly to go into this miserable kind of looking position, and he just missed his drawing chance at the right moment to try and get rid of the black pawns rather. So he missed a key drawing chance, it seems, in this position. If this really is the case, that bishop d4 was played, knight b5 could have, it seems, held the draw. Okay, but in the game, the miserable knight e2 and a miserable finish apparently with bishop f4 check. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.